I paid $3,500 for my own celebration party, and my mother turned it into my sister's engagement announcement. When I took the microphone and exposed the truth, her fiancé walked out on her right there. My father threatened to cut me off completely if I didn't back down. I chose myself for once, and now I'm the youngest female CEO in my company's history while my sister moved back home unemployed. The silence in the room was deafening when I stepped to the center, champagne glass in hand. My mother's face turned white as paper when I started speaking. This gathering today was planned to celebrate a major milestone in my life, I said, my voice steady despite the rage bubbling inside me. I glanced around at all the confused faces watching me. I was recently named Chief Strategic Investment Officer at Bradley & Lane, a major financial firm in Seattle. My sister Claire's fiancé and returned to look at her, confusion spreading across his face. I'm the one who sent the money for this event, I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word. The murmurs began rippling through the crowd of relatives and friends. My mother agreed to organize it for my promotion celebration. I locked eyes with my mother, who was desperately trying to signal me to stop, and never once mentioned it would be turned into an engagement party. Claire stepped forward, her red satin dress catching the light as she moved. Stephanie, don't ruin this for me, she hissed through a forced smile. Enra's eyes darted between us, clearly putting the pieces together. You told me this was just a family gathering, he said to Claire, his voice low but audible in the now menace-silent room. Claire's perfect makeup couldn't hide the panic flashing across her face. Andrew, I just wanted to wait for the right time, she stammered, reaching for his arm. He pulled away, disgust evident in his expression. By using your sister's money to stage your big reveal? He asked, shaking his head in disbelief. The champagne in his glass trembled as he set it down with controlled precision. I came here expecting to feel welcomed, not to watch someone be pushed out of their own moment. Without another word, he turned and walked toward the door. The click of his dress shoes against the hardwood floors echoed through the stunned silence. Claire's face crumpled as she ran after him, her heels stumbling on the carpet. Andrew, wait! It's not what you think. The front door slammed, and moments later we heard his Mercedes engine roar to life. My father stepped forward, his face contorted with rage I'd seen many times throughout my childhood. You should know your place, Stephanie, he growled, pointing a finger at me. I didn't flinch like I used to. This is still. No, I interrupted, surprising even myself with my boldness. Years of being the forgotten child, the afterthought, the shadow behind my sister's spotlight had finally culminated in this moment. This is a place built on favoritism, I said, looking directly into his eyes. My grandmother Helen stood from her seat, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. It's not a home anymore. I turned to my grandparents, the only ones who had ever made me feel valued. Grandpa Arthur reached for my hand as I stepped toward them. I don't need the rest of this family to know who I am. And with that, I walked out the door I had once left in silence years ago. But this time, my head was held high. I could hear Claire's sobs from the porch as I walked to my car. Behind me, through the open door, I heard her shriek, "You've always been jealous of me." Her mascara left black trails down her cheeks as she pointed at me accusingly. You can't stand seeing me happy, so you destroy everything. I stood still, keys in hand, not responding. For the first time, I didn't feel hurt by her words. I just felt tired of the same tired blame, played like a broken record throughout our lives. Claire, my grandmother's voice cut through the tension, calm but razor-minus sharp. She stood in the doorway, her small frame somehow commanding the space. You made your choices. Don't dump the consequences on your sister. My mother pushed past her, face pale with rage and embarrassment. Stephanie, who do you think you are to humiliate your sister in front of our family? The neighbors' porch lights were turning on, curious faces peeking through windows. I don't need to think, I replied quietly, feeling a strange sense of peace wash over me. I just told the truth. And I've stayed quiet long enough. My father appeared behind my mother, grabbing her arm as if to hold her back. But his eyes were blazing as he delivered his ultimatum. If you walk out of here today, he said, voice ice-mold cold in the warm spring evening, you're no longer part of this family. The crickets in the garden seemed to pause their chirping. Don't expect an inheritance. Don't expect to ever call us again. His words hung in the air between us. As far as we're concerned, you never existed. I was about to speak when Grandpa Arthur, who had silently observed the entire evening, suddenly stepped forward. His voice rang out like a bronze bell in the quiet night. David, if you're going to cut Stephanie out of this family, then it's time we clarify a few things. Grandma Helen took his hand and stepped forward with him, a united front of quiet dignity. My mother looked at them, her anger momentarily replaced by wariness. "We updated our will 3 months ago," Grandma Helen said calmly, her voice carrying across the lawn. The neighbors weren't even pretending not to listen now. "The entire estate, the house, the savings, the investment shares, it's all going to Stephanie." My mother let out a shocked gasp that sounded like she'd been punched. "What?" Her face drained of all color under the porch light. "We've seen enough," Grandpa Arthur said, squeezing Grandma Helen's hand. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of apple blossoms from the backyard. "Enough to know who lives by their values and who lives off of being cuddled." Claire appeared in the doorway, masquerade and in disbelief. "Claire is my biological daughter," my mother nearly screamed, pointing at her prized child. Her voice cracked with desperation. "Why her?" Grandma Helen's voice rumbled slightly, but her eyes remained steady as she delivered the final blow. "Because she's the only one in this family who never demanded anything, never complained, and never stepped on others to lift herself up." The truth hung in the air like summer lightning. "We don't reward favoritism or deceit." Claire burst into fresh airs, her pride unraveling before our eyes. She ran back inside, her red dress flaring like a bleeding stroke on a collapsing painting. My mother stood frozen on the porch steps, lips trembling. My father turned away, silent for once in his life. I clutched my purse, looking at my grandparents, my heart swelling with emotions I couldn't name. "I never asked for this," I said softly, meaning every word. "I don't need the inheritance." Grandpa Arthur smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling the way they always did when he was truly proud. "We know," he said simply. The wind tousled my hair gently. "And that's exactly why you deserve it more than anyone." I looked around at the house that had once been my prison, now a stage for truth to finally come to light. One by one, relatives emerged from inside, avoiding my gaze as if they had just awakened from a misguided dream. No one stopped me as I turned to leave. I stepped toward my car, the spring night breeze brushing my cheek. I heard the door shut behind me with finality. This time, it wasn't a door slamming shut on my worth. It was a final chapter closing on years of endurance. On the dark to-by grandparents' home, Grandma Helen reached over and gently took my hand. The streetletid cast a warm glow on her lined face. "You don't have to fight to prove yourself anymore, Stephanie," she said, her voice oft with emotion. Her hand felt warm and solid in mine, an anchor in the storm. "Now you get to just be." I looked at her, eyes stinging with tears I refused to shed. After a lifetime of trying to be worthy of love that was never freely given, I had never felt so at peace. Not because of the money, not because of recognition, but because, for the first time, I had chosen myself over chasing approval from people who never truly wanted to see me. 3 years have passed since that night, the night I walked out of my parents' house for the last time, carrying the truth, the pain, and the strength I never knew I had. I never looked back. I never felt the need to. During those 3 years, I poured my heart into my work at Bradley and Lane. Every early morning before sunrise, every quiet night on the 19th floor. There I was, refining strategy, tweaking the PRISM algorithm, listening to the market, and leading my team through moments that once felt impossible. When the current CEO, Richard Langley, announced his retirement, no one expected him to choose me as his successor. The boardroom fell silent when he said my name, 30 pairs of eyes turning to stare at me. But to me, it wasn't luck or favoritism. It was the result of every effort, every sleepless night, and every hard decision I had ever made. On the day I was officially appointed CEO of Bradley and Lane Capital, I was 30 years old. The youngest female CEO in the firm's 60-plus year history. The announcement took place in the main hall, camera lights flashing, every seat filled with shareholders and industry leaders. I stood on that stage, not to impress, but to represent a new generation. One that doesn't have to be born into glory to create its own. After the speech, I slipped away from the crowd and took out my phone. I called my grandparents, the same way I did every Sunday. "I did it," I whispered, voice thick with emotion as I stared out at the Seattle skyline from the top floor. Grandpa Arthur laughed on the other end, his voice cracking with age but still filled with the same warmth. And Grandma Helen repeated the words I'll never forget, words that healed wounds I didn't know could ever heal. "You've always been worthy, Stephanie. From day one." Meanwhile, 40 miles away in the town of Salem where I grew up, things hadn't changed much. Claire was now 27, no longer wearing the engagement ring, nor holding a steady job. After Andrew walked away that night, her life spiraled through one failed attempt after another. She dropped a fashion course saying it was too much pressure. She tried being a content creator but quit because no one gets my style. And eventually, she moved back in with our parents. Into the same room she once took from me, now a shrine to her squandered potential. I haven't spoken to my parents since that night. Sometimes my grandparents mention that they've asked about me through mutual friends. But I don't care anymore. I've learned that not every relationship is meant to be kept, especially when it's built on denial and selfishness. Every Sunday afternoon I visit my grandparents for dinner. We toast bread, flip through old photo albums I once thought were buried forever. Grandma Helen still tells little stories from my childhood, and Grandpa Arthur pretends not to remember them just so I have to retell every detail. One time I asked them if they ever regretted leaving everything to me. Grandma set down her teacup, sunlight streaming through the window behind her. "We didn't leave it because of what it was worth," she said, reaching for my hand across the table. Her wedding ring caught the light, the same one she'd worn for over 50 years. "We left it to the one who understood the value of choice, the one who chose integrity over convenience, silence when it mattered, and voice when it counted." I smiled because I knew that was the greatest inheritance they gave me. Not assets, but faith in myself. One spring afternoon, as I was leaving the office after a global strategy meeting, I saw someone waiting in the main lobby. I squinted through the sunlight streaming through the glass doors, then realized it was Claire. She looked thinner, her gaze uncertain, but still wore her signature look designer coat and polished heels. The receptionist looked at me questioningly, but I nodded that it was okay. "I'm not here to apologize," Claire said immediately, like a shield between us. Her hands fidgeted with her expensive purse, the same nervous habit she'd had since childhood. I just want to know how you're doing so well without anyone lifting you up." I looked at her, not angry, not pitying. The marble floor between us might as well have been an ocean. "Because I once had nothing, Claire," I said softly, and that's when I learned to stand on my own. The afternoon light cast long shadows across the lobby. "That's something you've never had to do." Claire stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. She said nothing, then turned and walked away, the click of her heels fading into the busy street outside. I don't know if she'll ever change. But I do know I'll never go back to being the sister who always yielded, always endured, always stayed silent to keep the peace. I walked back to my office where my team was waiting to build something new together. The city skyline spread out before me through floor windows to minus-ceiling windows. And I knew that no matter where the path starts, as long as you don't abandon yourself, the destination will always be worth it. My story isn't just about overcoming favoritism in a family. It's a testament to the power of perseverance and inner worth. I was once overlooked, pushed aside in my own celebration. But I chose to rise. Not out of spite, but out of truth and dignity. Today, I no longer seek validation from those who once denied me, because I found my place among those who truly believe in me. And more importantly, I've learned to believe in myself.